blind, have low vision, or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Val Macer, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the February 1st issue of the New York Times Arts and Leisure section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. First article is A Master Pianist's Full Legacy by David Weiniger. Who was Maurizio Pollini? A sensation, for one thing. With his win at the 1960 International Chopin Piano Competition, he was the youngest winner ever at 18 and the first Italian. He became an object of fascination throughout the music world. That impression was only reinforced, even deepened, when not long after he withdrew from concert activity and spent 18 months studying with the enigmatic Arturo Benedetti Michelangeli. And the attention would never wane. The real question about Pollini, though, one that has divided listeners throughout his career, centered on his pianistic technique, which at times seemed superhuman. It was there at least from the time of his competition victory, when Arthur Rubinstein declared that technically he already plays better than any of us on the jury. When asked about that comment in a 2014 documentary, the ever-modest Pollini played it down, insisting that it was Rubinstein's way of backhandedly teasing his fellow jurors. Whether that was true or not, it became clear when Pollini began concertizing and recording that he was capable of playing even the hardest repertoire with a precision and X-ray transparency that few, if any, of his peers could match. To partisans, of whom there were many, this bracing approach heralded a new, specifically modern form of musicianship that put technique at the service of composer and score rather than showmanship. Clean, sharp-edged, objective interpretations, free of flourishes and exaggerations, even in the most romantic repertory, as the Time magazine put it in 1980. To his detractors, a smaller but often insistent minority, his playing was all cold calculation and no heart. It put the notes in the right places, but was emotionally inert, a gleaming, modernistic construction in which all the lights were on, but no one was home, as you might say. There were elements of truth on both sides. Where you landed had as much to do with what you were listening for in a particular piece as with the pianist himself. At his best, Pollini's technique and intellect were capable of revealing wholly new aspects of familiar music. When he died in 2024, the Icelandic pianist Víkingur Ólafsson wrote in a Facebook post, "With Pollini, things were never simple. Chopin became the musical architect, Stockhausen the poet, Beethoven the philosopher. Many of us became better listeners and players." Recently, Deutsche Grammophon, Pollini's label for essentially his entire career, issued a box set of his complete recordings. Originally released in 2016 to honor his 75th birthday, the new version adds work from his final years. It now clocks in at a mammoth 62 CDs, along with a Blu-ray disc and a couple of DVDs. With the book presumably closed on Pollini's recording career, You can judge the worth of his artistry for yourself from the beginning of his career. 4 of his prize-winning performances from the 1960 Chopin competition appear on the CD for the first time, and they confirm that his clarity, unforced power, and a dash of bravado were there from the start. If listeners were expecting him to continue with Chopin, they must have been shocked by his first Deutsche Grammophon LP from 1972, Stravinsky's 3 movements from Petrushka and Prokofiev's Piano Sonata No. 7. Even more stunning was the impression it made, a young pianist taking on 2 pieces of treacherous difficulty and blazing through them with a speed and articulation that were hard to fathom. As a debut, it ranks with Glenn Gould's epic-making Goldberg Variations from 1955. In the CD era, the Prokofiev and Stravinsky would be paired with 2 more 20th century milestones, Webern's Opus 27 Variations and Boulez's frighteningly complex Second Piano Concerto Sonata. Heard together, they form a manifesto of musical modernism, executed with a proficiency that served notice of a fully formed talent's arrival. More 20th century fare was to come. Pollini had an extraordinary sympathy for Schoenberg's music, calling him one of the most expressive composers in all history, and his account of Schoenberg's solo piano music smolders with intensity. A similar energy infuses the first 2 Bartók concertos, with his friend Claudio Abbado conducting the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. His live performances of Stockhausen's Klavierstück were legendary. Sadly, he never recorded them. In retrospect, the 1970s were the golden age of Pollini's recording career, in which he could do almost no wrong. When he did return to Chopin, it was with both sets of etudes, and his performances attained a reference status that they retain today, even if they are played, as David Allen once wrote in the New York Times, as brutalist edifices. The same could be said of Polonaise, which were sometimes terrifying in their single-minded drive. Other early recordings, though, undercut the take-no-prisoners side of his musicianship. Listen to his account of Mozart's Piano Concerto in A, Koschel 488, recorded with the Vienna Philharmonic under Karl Bohm. This is Mozart playing of Apollonian elegance, and if there is a hint of reserve, the elegiac slow movements makes as deep an impression as any account I know. But the prize in the 70s is Pollini's account of Beethoven's last 5 piano sonatas, an eye-raising choice for a first Beethoven recording. As expected, he meets the music's performance demands, even those of the Hemiklavier Sonata, with seeming ease. The real achievement, though, is how technical facility serves other virtues: sonority, phrasing, structure, lyricism, that open up the entire world of the composer's final works. Since the day I first heard these recordings, they have defined late Beethoven for me. Perhaps unavoidably, Pollini's work became more uneven as the years went on, and more of his repertoire appeared on disc. His account of Liszt's Piano Sonata in B minor is a classic, as are the ashen works that accompany it on disc. Beethoven recordings that followed his triumph in the late sonatas were highly variable. His playing of sonatas and concertos from the composer's middle period could be ear-opening in their lucidity, but he missed the charm and humor of many of the earlier, smaller-scale works. You would think that Pollini would be a natural fit for the intellectual challenges of Bach's music, but his rendition of the first book of the Well-Tempered Clavier, the only Bach in his catalog, is smoothly played but somewhat faceless, with little variation among the individual preludes and fugues. Perhaps no composer embodied the pluses and minuses of Pollini's playing more compactly than Schumann. In the famous David Bunzerlantz and Kreisliana, he was technically faultless, but brusque, even impatient, as if in control for control's sake. By contrast, in lesser-known pieces, the First Sonata, the Concerto without Orchestra, and the Allegro in B minor, he found music of surging power and emotional resonance. He, Abbado, and the Berlin Philharmonic also did wonders with the Piano Concerto, which demands hand-in-glove rapport among all participants. I saw these same artists perform it in 1999. No other account has matched its high-flying ensemble virtuosity. Pairing their studio recording with the Schoenberg Concerto was a brilliant choice and an equally inspired success. Two developments mark much of Pollini's work in the 21st century. First, he began to record works, re-record works, which was perhaps inevitable given his small repertoire. He said in the 2014 documentary that he added music to his rotation only based on the absolute certainty that he would never grow weary of the works he selected. This led to some puzzling omissions. Given his achievements in Debussy's Etudes, it's tantalizing to think what he would have done with, say, Ravel's Mirage. His re-evaluations were a mixed bag, but rarely wholesale improvements. Pollini recorded the Brahms Concerti 3 times, and there is little in the final renditions that was not there the first time around. His 2011 take on the Chopin Preludes trades the bravura flair of his 1975 recording for an almost disinterested efficiency. Perhaps he thought this approach might bring out Chopin's innovative harmony more effectively, but it strains credulity to say that this rethink constitutes an upgrade. This era of recordings also reveals the waning of his vaunted technical prowess. Pollini was only human, after all, and there was a sense among some reviewers of his later performances that the limitations on his fingers could elicit some deeper engagement with the music. But this is difficult to sense in recordings, and it is hard to hear the messiness of the passages once rendered with granitic specificity and not think that he should have left well enough alone. Most disheartening was his decision, in some of his very last recordings, to visit the late Beethoven sonatas, with which he had triumphed 4 decades earlier. The fingerwork is blurry and excessively pedaled. Rather than letting the music's paragraphs unfold naturally, Pollini seems to be in a rush to get to the finish line. Everything feels intemperate, indistinct, and unfinished. Maybe what the elder statesman needed toward the end was an injection of youthful energy. In what would become his final recording, he teamed up with his son Daniel, himself a fine pianist, for an all-Schubert album. While Maurizio's rendition of the Sonata in G, Dussel 894, sounds heavy and earthbound, their performance of the Fantasy in F minor brims with nobility, very close to the crystalline, tragic beauty the elder Pollini brought to the composer's late sonatas decades earlier. Whatever the merits of those final efforts, or any other slice of Pollini's recorded legacy, really, he inarguably changed pianism, not just by resetting expectations for his successors, but also, equally, by altering what listeners sought out and valued in a performance. At his apex, intellect, technique, and imagination combined in a quest for something like artistic truth. To paraphrase Olafson, we all became better listeners. Pollini probably wouldn't have claimed so lofty an achievement. Toward the end of the 2014 documentary, the interview suggested that the pianist is a kind of artistic missionary or pioneer. Pollini gives a wry smile and bursts into laughter, saying, "Absolutely not. I do things for my own pleasure. Basta." You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times Arts and Leisure section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The next article is called "This Actress Can Have You in Stitches" by Alexis Solosky. Jessica Williams displays her gift for comedy on Shrinking, the name of a television program, and nurtures a life offset. Jessica Williams screwed a wooden hoop to a denim tote bag, then threaded a small needle with off-white thread. "Oh, the thrill of it," she said. The actress and comedian stars in the Apple TV comedy Shrinking. Offset, her hobbies are manifold: ceramics, cooking, music lessons on a heart-shaped guitar. Williams, 36, was soon to start a sewing class, and she has upholstery ambitions. She said, "I want to get a staple gun and just get in there." For her, hobbies are a pleasure, a way to calm a busy mind and a necessary distraction from a crazy-making industry. You have to find a life outside of acting, otherwise it'll destroy you, she said pleasantly. On a chilly January morning, a few weeks before the return of Shrinking, which began its third season on Wednesday, Williams had come to a midtown Manhattan office building for an introductory course in embroidery. Christine Frayling, the founder of the New York Sewing Center, and Fabian Salazar, the school's embroidery guru, met her in a private classroom with a stack of patterns and dozens of spools of colored thread. Williams has earned Emmy nominations for each of the first two seasons of Shrinking. Described by the showrunner Bill Lawrence as an odd comedic combination of self-confidence and simultaneous insecurity, she lights up the screen as Gabby, an empathetic, effervescent psychologist. But she arrived at the sewing center visibly exhausted, a victim of jet lag and a binge watch of Members Only Palm Beach, a Netflix reality show the night before. But she brightened as she sat beneath a cut and sew neon sign, wearing a knit beanie, soft pants, and a faded t-shirt celebrating the monomaniac wrestler Goldberg. She flipped among the patterns, selecting an outline of a martini glass. She planned to embroider the drink as she preferred it, super, super dirty. I want basically olives with a little bit of vodka. She began to sew the outline. It was, unsurprisingly, a natural. "I beasted these," she said, gesturing to her stitches. A born cut-up, Williams began acting in school plays as a child in Torrance, California. Her parents were supportive, particularly her father, who had worked security for comedians. In high school, she joined an improv team, sports for dorks, as she described it. She continued competitive improv in college at Cal State Long Beach, where she began to audition for professional projects. At 22, she caught the eye of the casting director, Allison Jones. Soon she was flown to New York to audition for Comedy Central's The Daily Show. Williams was a correspondent on the show for 4 years. She also returned briefly in 2024. John Oliver, another former correspondent, recalled that she arrived as a fully formed performer. She's just innately funny, and her instincts are so sharp, he wrote in an email. And yet, despite being so naturally talented, she was also an incredibly hard worker. In 2016, as her Daily Show tenure was ending, she began recording the podcast Two Dope Queens alongside the comedian Phoebe Robinson. What began as a frisky hangout morphed into a deft interview show that included 2 mini-seasons on HBO. The final guest, Michelle Obama. Williams might have stayed longer with the podcast or The Daily Show, but she feared being pigeonholed. She was being asked to host award shows, to be a red carpet commentator. Which is great, she said, but for me, I always knew I was an actor. The transition to dramatic roles was not exactly seamless. She felt that she was rarely taken seriously in auditions. It's hard when you're a correspondent, she said. It's hard when you're a woman. It's hard when you're fully black. You really have to repeatedly show people, time and time again, who you are before they start booking. Williams did a small role in the Fantastic Beasts franchise and a title role in the 2017 Netflix movie The Incredible Jessica James, which was written for her. She was also cast as the romantic interest in the 2nd season of the HBO Max series Love Life, opposite William Jackson Harper. Harper recalls meeting her for a chemistry read. It was just like, oh damn, he said. On set he found her crazy smart and simultaneously rigorous and relaxed. She had the gift, he said, of fusing herself with a character to the point that her performance appears entirely natural. She makes things look a lot easier than they are, he said. On Shrinking, Williams also makes it look easy. Gabby is a skilled therapist given to vivid ensembles. Another character describes her as a gorgeous 6-foot-tall woman who dresses like a human funfetti. The writers hadn't necessarily envisioned someone quite so tall or maximalist, but this was part of the Williams package and a way to complicate a character who could have settled into stereotype. Williams has been in therapy off and on since college. I need it, she said. Acting's hard, and being alive is suffering. It never hurts to talk to someone impartial. She welcomed the chance to play a compassionate clinician while ensuring that Gabby avoided becoming a black lady therapist cliche, a helpmeet designed to empower white characters. The way to escape tropes is with specificity, she said. She participated in conversations about her characters' relationships, her vocabulary, and her funfetti chic wardrobe. And she consulted on the casting of Damon Wayans Jr. as her love interest. Their relationship deepens in season 3. The show has already been renewed for a 4th season. Lawrence, who is also one of the show's creators, had wanted her because of her gift for comedy. She's just flat out funny, he said. What surprised him was her ability to convey emotions both broad and fine. Gabby had been intended as the stable, cheerful clinician in an office shared with Jason Segel's shambolic Jimmy and Harrison Ford's gruff Paul. The writer soon varied that ebullience. We very immediately course-corrected when we saw how good she was at being vulnerable, Lawrence said. That vulnerability surprised Segel, who was also a co-creator of the series. He knew Williams was a genius improviser, but he hadn't anticipated that her improvisations would sometimes move their scenes into something real and raw. That's the most thrilling part of working with Jessica, he said. She can go toe-to-toe with the funniest person in the world, but she can also veer off into this little pocket of truth. She enjoys the acclaim from peers and the reputational boost of 2 supporting actress Emmy nominations. But has the recognition made landing subsequent jobs any easier? Not yet, she said. Again, I'm a black actor. She wants to play all sorts of parts in dramas, romantic comedies, horror movies, thrillers, and she knows she can. I know what I'm capable of, she said. She is, she said, just waiting for the chance. People have to go, oh wait, what about her, she said. What about the weird girl over there, the tall one? Let's try it. In the meantime, she practices patience and pursues hobby, embroidery being the latest. With Frayling's help, she tied off the thread. I'm kind of gagging, she said happily. A few of the stitches were uneven, but she forgave the imperfections. She planned to complete the martini glass on the plane back home. If I were only doing acting, I would be so depressed, she said, so I try and just have a full life. Jessie Green wrote an article called Plotzes and Jetses of a Life in Musicals. A lot of dreams have come true for Mark Shaiman, Broadway songwriter, soundtrack savant, Jewish Eeyore, and human Spotify. Go ahead, ask him. He knows every song. And yet each fruition seems to have prompted an equal and opposite karmic blowback. In 2012, after bragging to his mother that he'd rehearsed with Billy Crystal all day and recorded with Bette Midler all night, she pricked his ego balloon by saying, so, maybe through them you'll meet someone important? Shaiman, 66, relates that story, along with hundreds of other hair-raising, name-dropping tales of success and comeuppance, in Never Mind the Happy, a memoir of his 50-year musical career recently published by Post Hill Press. The title was his mother's response to being wished a happy and healthy New Year. If showbiz puts you on a pedestal on Tuesday, he writes, it's only to have a better shot at your anatomy on Thursday. The pedestal is impressive, though, especially when you consider that he climbed it on the strength of innate talent. No one in his family had musical interest, let alone musical ability, yet Shaiman wasn't even out of his teens when he started working with Midler. In his 20s, he wrote scrappy, zany, East Village shows with Scott Whitman, his lyricist partner, and for 25 years, romantic partner too. Together, they eventually reached the true promised land of Broadway with the huge hit Hairspray in 2002, while Shaiman continued his Hollywood career, scoring dozens of popular movies such as Sister Act, Beaches, and When Harry Met Sally. He even had a 9-second cartoon cameo as Big Gay Al's pianist in South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, for which he wrote the songs with Trey Parker. It was an honor just to be animated, he allowed in the book. That joke has a sting in its tail. Nominated 7 times for Academy Awards, he never won. He still sulks about it, as well as the 5 Broadway shows that followed Hairspray, of which only one, Martin Short, Fame Becomes Me, turned a profit. Also, still rankling him are the endless series of manipulations by producers, betrayals by studios, and his own somewhat bratty reactions to brush-offs by celebrities. Let's just say that when he accompanied Nora Ephron to one of Short's Christmas parties, the key he selected was not ideally suited to her voice. But what bothers Shaiman most is that despite his achievements, few people seem to know who he is anymore. That was one reason he wrote the memoir, which he almost called Google Me. Sulking would be intolerable, Even he can barely tolerate it. If he weren't such a teddy bear and talent, with songs and arrangements invoking those of Golden Age musical theater greats like Jewel Stein, Hollywood masters like Nelson Riddle, soul legends like Sam Cooke, and pop impresarios like Phil Spector. Any 5 of the hundreds of tunes in his catalog, say, You Can't Stop the Beat, I Know Where I've Been, They Just Keep Moving the Line, Let Me Be Your Star, and Some Like It Hot, should be enough to put him in at least a junior pantheon. But the music world he steeped himself in and learned to emulate with a lover's ardor has mostly faded away, leaving him to wonder whether he should too. Is he done with Broadway? In what may prove to have been an exit interview, he recently spoke with me in the equipment-crammed music room of his New York City apartment about the often conjoined highlights and lowlights of his life, but also the compensations of love. He married Louis Mirabal, a retired naval officer, in 2016. Wines and tears notwithstanding, he seems to be creeping toward some kind of provisional peace. These are edited excerpts from his conversation. I want to read you something I wrote in 2002, he said, just before Hairspray opened in Seattle. Saying that Shaman is filled with dread is like saying he's filled with blood. Despite the antidepressant Celexa and a panoply of anxiety-reducing fetishes, he can only aspire to pessimism. Has that improved? Shaman responded, No, if anything, it's worse. I remain unhealthy, persistently pessimistic. One would think your skin would get thicker, but my skin has gotten thinner and thinner and thinner. The author wrote, I wonder if that's just aging. I mean, literally, our skin gets thinner. But after you've been in so many battles, you'd think you'd have developed the ability to bounce back, he said. That hasn't been easy, especially these last few years. The author wrote, You're talking about those 4 post-Hairspray flops, Catch Me If You Can, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Some Like It Hot, and Smash. Some were great, most had great movements, all of them died young, but you've nevertheless had an amazing career. Shaman responded, The subtitle of the book is Showbiz Stories from a Sore Winner. So I admit, for anyone to read this or hear me complain, it's ridiculous. Look at all I've been given and was able to give out. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times Arts and Leisure section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Continuing the interview with Marc Shaiman, the author wrote, It strikes me that, like all your songs, the book has a really strong rhythm, the alternation of what you call the plots and zets, the dizzying joy and the knife in the side. Let's start with some of your top plotses. Shaman said, I was a Bette Midler fanatic at 13, moved to New York at 16, and the first people I meet, Scott Whitman being one of them, live across the hall from one of Bette's backup singers. A year later, I'm in Los Angeles, playing for Bette, who says, Stick around, I could use you. My flight back to New York is canceled, and I'm placed in the guest room of her home. Not even a hotel, not even the guest house in the back, but down the hall from her. We were suddenly living like brother and sister, and that has remained our relationship now for 50 years. The author writes, Another plot, obviously, is Hairspray. After years of fun, but little seen, and not very remunerative downtown shows, you and Scott have a mega hit on Broadway and a Tony Award for the best score. Shaman said, The plot is not only to have written it, but to have it be taken to heart, by so many people, and for it to be so joyous. And joy is a part of me. You see it when Scott and I are accepting the Tony, which leads to my saying on national TV that I love him and I want to marry him. And then comes the kiss heard around the world, all unplanned. But talk about your Platzes and your Getze's. At that incredible moment with Scott, I came back into the audience, and my father, who was always a very genial person, he was seething that I had not thanked my parents. At that moment, I was like, I'm not going to let you ruin this moment for me. But soon I was just full of terrible guilt, and will be till the day I die. The author says, you really can't help it, can you? Shaman says, I started young. When I was 12, the girls' choir at my school was invited to perform the Carpenters' hit Sing with Karen Carpenter herself at the Garden Gates Art Center. I transcribed it, arranged it, taught them the harmony. But when the concert happened, they told me there was no room on the bus. The author says, I'm going to pull you back. Accompanying Midler on that stunning Johnny Carson farewell in 1992, when she sang One for My Baby, a song you picked and arranged for her, had to be the Platz of all Platzes. Shaman answered, yes, even though it's nothing I wrote, but I put no lines between the writing music, writing lyrics, arranging, orchestrating, figuring out the concept, finding the perfect song. To me, it's all one big ball of wax. Author says, what is the wax? What is the thing that all those things are? Shaman responded, communicating. I'm sure there are many people who wish I communicated less, but thank God I have music and lyrics to say what I hope to say. The next question. Based on the fate of these post-Hairspray shows, do you worry that people won't want to hear what you're saying as much as they used to? Shaman said, I think maybe it's my fault. Some shows don't work, and I haven't taken enough responsibility for that. Musically, I've held on too hard, trying to stay pure to the eras in which the shows take place. Maybe Some Like It Hot would still be running if I'd been less faithful to the sounds of the 30s and 40s. Next question. What are you saying? Even if it's expensive to produce, shouldn't the sound match the period? Shaman responded, look at The Great Gatsby, a musical that takes place in the 1920s, but that uses contemporary music and does a great job. Or look at the creators of Maybe Happy Ending. I was so jealous that they had this brilliant concept that just so happened to call for just a 4-man cast. How blessed they are to have had the muse inspire them so. Scott and I gravitate toward shows and sounds that require bigger ensembles. I guess because we grew up in the tail end of the golden age of Broadway. We were born too late. What I got in me, what I've been holding down inside, if I ever let it out. Question, next question or statement. Well, exactly. You need the size of the songs because of the size of the feelings. That's not just where Broadway is right now. It's smaller. Not that smaller can't be beautiful. I don't know that I'm at peace with that, Shaman says. When Scott and I were working in England on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, walking back to our hotel one night, we saw a sign outside Mamma Mia that said, you already know you're going to love it. I pointed to it and said, there lies the future. I've had a really long run, and I'm very proud. But if they don't want what I do, why do it? The author said, you don't mean you retire? Shaman responded, I do. Because I should have included among the Platzes the fact that I've had 2 great love affairs in my life, that Scott and I were able to live through our breakup and continue to collaborate, and that Lou and I can all be friends, is a lesson that life sometimes does work out. The glass can be half full. but only half, the author said. Well, last week I finally had nothing to do for one day, no special lyric to write, no one asking me for anything. And by around 2:30, I was like, this is hideous. Joe Coscarelli and John Caramanica have written an article called A$AP Rocky Gets Back to Music. In the time since A$AP Rocky released his last album, Testing, in 2018, he's acted in 2 Hollywood movies, become romantic partners, and a father of 3 with Rihanna, faced 2 criminal prosecutions, and seen dozens of his unfinished songs let loose onto the internet by leakers. It has been a sometimes agonizing, sometimes thrilling stretch of time defined by upheaval, and it sometimes seems like Rocky might never put out an album again. I never accepted that, he said on podcast, the New York Times pop culture show, in an interview in early January. That's my core. I consider myself a Renaissance man, so it starts with music. His 4th album, Don't Be Dumb, released on January 9th, is a return to some of Rocky's familiar musical influences, with gothic takes on southern rap styles, such as in Playa and Helicopter, and experimental production that dabbles in cloudy abstraction and psychedelic rock, like Punk Rocky. Typical of the rapper's preferred eclecticism, the album features appearances by rappers like Delchi and Tyler, the Creator, alongside vocals from the folk singer Jessica Pratt and Damon Albarn. I think this album is what 2011 Rocky would be making in 2026, he said. He has also maintained a sense of humor about the long wait. In advance of the album, he released merchandise emblazoned with the phrase, "Album never dropping." In a wide-ranging conversation, Rocky, 37, discussed how he's grappled with the effects of his legal entanglements, the alleged shooting of a close friend for which he was acquitted in Los Angeles last year, and an assault conviction for a street fight in Sweden in 2019, for which he served no additional jail time. He also detailed what it's been like to make music since the death of his music mentor and advisor, A$AP Yams, his family life with Rihanna, and his growing acting career, including what is likely to engage in a rap battle with Denzel Washington in Spike Lee's latest film, Highest to Lowest. These are edited excerpts from the conversation. Joe Coscarelli says, "Here we are, nearly 8 years from Testing, and you start off the new one right off the bat. Quote, it's been a little while since I've been in the league, a couple little trials, a couple little leaks," unquote. Not to mention 3 kids, the movies. Which of those things is most responsible for you not releasing music? A$AP Rocky said, all of the above. I just didn't want to really use the kids as a scapegoat. I just always said to myself, like, I ain't gonna rush it, man. I thought I was ready in 2024. I thought the court case was going to be done. That thing kept getting pushed back. And it was kind of hard to really focus, you know what I mean? Not only that, me being a parent played a big part. I want to be there. I want to be present. I want to be supportive. And all of these different instances are what gave me new material to talk about. Coscarelli said, there's a lot of family stuff on this album, but also a lot of anger about your trial last year, including a song called Stop Snitching. That followed the case in Sweden. Were you thinking, how did I get myself back into another of those situations? A$AP Rocky said, absolutely. Every time you're in a situation like that, it's never again. And when it happens again, you're like, what the expletive, here we go again. But there's a lesson to be learned, even if you're not in the wrong necessarily. God just has a funny way, in my opinion, of humbling you. Coscarelli asks, I'm curious about the push and pull between I can't believe this is happening and what my role is in what is happening. A$AP Rocky said, I think a lot of rappers have a hard battle with survivor's guilt, survivor's remorse. For a long time, I was that guy, and I wanted everybody happy. I wanted everybody successful. It's really predominantly in hip-hop culture where you're supposed to live by this certain code. You're supposed to do these certain things for your boys. That didn't change who I am as a man. If you're a loved one of mine, a friend, a relative, I'm still going to look out for you any way I can. But I felt more compelled to take on everybody's issues, and I kept being supportive of just nonsense, no good people. I think this was God's way of showing me, you've got to cut it off. And when I cut it off, this was their way of pulling me back in. John Caramanica asks, as you're feeling pulled back on this one path, you also have a whole new path that's presented itself. You have 3 children. I wonder if you were not a family man now, would it have been much harder to cut off all those others? Rocky said, absolutely, bro. A woman will change your whole life, especially if it's a companion. Being with my girl took a blindfold off. As soon as you get with a girl, she'll tell you, like, that's not your friend. That's your friend. But that one? Coscarelli said, and to be clear, you didn't just get with any girl. A$AP Rocky said, I know. I got with a very special woman. You know what I mean? I'm thankful that she was put in my life at that time, because I think any time prior to that, I don't think I was ready for something like that. I don't think she was either. Caramanica says, I wonder how finding a partner like that, being in love, changed you. Because if you'd asked me in 2012, is this guy going to be the most happily married, coupled up man in rap music, I respectfully would have said, probably not. A$AP Rocky responds, hell no, we was having fun. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times Arts and Leisure section of the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Continuing with the article about A$AP Rocky, Caramanica says, but you've hard swerved, and I wonder what it took to get you to that place. A$AP Rocky said, I always wanted to be a parent. Everybody knows you've got to be really selective and careful about who you procreate with. Meeting somebody that was like morally inclined, it really felt like we were on parallel as far as things we can agree on. We were on the same page, born the same year. My dad is from her country. You know, being the same industry, doing the same thing, it's so many similarities. It's just funny. We laugh about it. She was always my boo. I always had love for her. And when we were just friends, my mother used to say, like, I know you like this girl that you're with right now. I ain't going to say no names, but I want you with Ree. That girl don't even want me like that. We cool, Ma. That's just my friend. Chill. But I'm telling you, she's real, and mothers know that. Caramanica says, one thing I've thought a lot about watching your life with Rihanna over the last few years is that your friend and mentor Yams is not present to watch this part of your life. For that time in between, was there an absence you felt that finding a partner healed? A$AP Rocky said, there's still that empty void, even to this day. Yams and her was like this, though, crossing his fingers. She loved Yams. She took us on the Diamonds tour, and Yams used to come out lit. I mean, everybody loved Yams. He was a lovable guy. Caramanica says, I know how seriously you took his musical judgment. In those intervening years where you didn't put records out, did you not know who to turn to say, is this the right thing? A$AP Rocky said, I don't, so I just do me. But I have really good taste, especially when it comes to decor, fashion, lifestyle, music, film, everything. I'm so confident in it. It's just like I make certain music, it's an acquired taste. You can't compare Chanel to Fashion Nova. Coscarelli says, so you don't feel like you're chasing hits, you're chasing bespoke sounds that feel true to you because you're a famous guy, but you don't really have top 40 hits. A$AP Rocky says, I don't got to do that. I did that right out of the gate. We know the formula. Everybody knows the formula. Yo, get this artist, get that artist, get this producer, call it a day. It's easy. You can tell when people are looking for hits by the choice of collaboration. Personally, I never exploited my music for my celebrity advantages. I don't have to. I'm that guy. I'm him, Burton. I don't got to do none of that. Coscarelli asks, so you consider your music and your celebrity separate, and your celebrity allows you not to compromise in your music? A$AP Rocky says, absolutely. I'd just rather be a creative genius. Miss me with the politics, man. Caramanica says, something fundamentally changed in rap fashion in 2013, 2014, after A$AP and Odd Future. Watching the Peso or Purple Flag videos, it's just how everyone dresses now. I wonder how you think about the influence outside of a purely musical sense. A$AP Rocky says, it's flattering because, like you said, before me it was Kanye and it was Pharrell. Before him it was Kool Keith. It was Grand Puba. You know, Fly Guys. I think that we're supposed to inspire. I'm glad that I get to be the guy that people reference or go to see for some type of inspiration, because I feel that way about me too. You know what I'm saying? Coscarelli says, that said, you're being very magnanimous about it now, but you also have a song on this record called Stoya Flow, where you're not taking so kindly to people biting your style. Obviously, the internet's going to decide who you're talking about. A$AP Rocky says, I think we all know. Coscarelli said, they're going to say it's Drake. He was with you in those early days, brought you on tour. Where did things go wrong in that relationship? A$AP Rocky said, I don't know. I just started seeing people who started out as friends become foes. Some seemed like they was unhappy for you and started sending shots. I think that's what led us to our misunderstandings, or whatever the case is. It ain't really smoke. Caramanica says, does it feel resolvable to you? A$AP Rocky goes, nah, it don't even need to be. For what? Coscarelli says, an album like Testing was an experimental swerve for you, and even this album might not be an immediate crowd pleaser. These album listeners like to argue over. Do you think you're appreciated as the creative genius you say you are? A$AP Rocky said, I think that I don't really give an expletive. I think I am. I know I am. Without trying to sound delusional or too self-centered, yes, absolutely. If you look at my discography, it speaks for itself. As that's it. Sophie Turner is the headliner, listing her 10 headlines. When Sophie Turner asked director Sam Miller for an elevator pitch about Steel, the limited series he was proposing, he said, what makes good people do bad things? That really hooked me, she said. So did the show's examination of the uncontrollable cost of living, the wage gap, and familial alcoholism. I was excited to play an office worker, said Turner, best known as Sansa Stark in Games of Thrones. I was also really excited to play a bit of a mess. That mess is Zara, who becomes entangled in a heist at a London investment firm. Steel, streaming on Amazon Prime Video, got adrenaline pumping for Turner's turn as the archaeologist Lara Croft in a reboot of Tomb Raider, she said from London, while elaborating on some favorite things. These are edited excerpts. 1. Tenzing Natural Energy. I discovered it while training because I needed something healthy that my nutritionist could approve. It was full of natural ingredients, but it's like drinking crack, basically. It takes all the fatigue away. Now the entire stunt department is hooked on Tenzing. 2. My Spotify playlist with everything. 1 minute it's playing Ludovico Einaudi, and then the next minute it's playing stuff from the 60s or 2 days ago. I listen to it all day long, especially driving. There's nothing better than screaming at the top of your lungs to your favorite playlist. Number 3, Lumi Sunrise Lamp. The nature of my job is I'm always having to wake up before sunrise, and I find it incredibly difficult to wake up without natural sunlight. So it gives the effect of sunrise over the course of how long it would take for the sun to rise. And when it's finally at its brightest, you naturally wake up without being jolted by a horrible alarm. 4, Instacart. It's the first thing I do when I go to the States. I immediately the world is my oyster. I can order anything. You can order a paddling pool and it'll be there in 10 minutes. It brings me utter joy. Number 5, the Egypt collection at the British Museum. I'm absolutely obsessed with ancient Egypt to the point where you might think I'm insane, but I do believe it was a past life of mine. I always say to my friends, I was obviously a pharaoh, but I don't think that's the case, actually. 6, Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian L. Weiss. This psychiatrist essentially put his career on the line to write this book because it's about past lives and hypnosis and things that are not scientific and based on what seems like facts. I don't want to push the agenda on anyone else, but it's kind of become my personal religion. Marmite. I only discovered it 3 years ago, and all my friends started calling me the Marmite Man because I literally was spooning it out and licking my fingers. Number 8, Lips by Hung Van Gogh and Louis Vuitton. Hung is a makeup artist that I've worked with now for 10 years, and he has this lip liner called Follow the Natural Shape that I swear by. And I've been really lucky to be an ambassador for Louis Vuitton about 10 years now. 9, my keychain from my daughters. I have 2 girls, Willa 5 and Delphine 3. I take the chain with me everywhere. It says, I love you, Mummy, in Willa's handwriting. And then Delphine wrote an M in a heart because she can't quite spell Mummy yet. I find it a great reminder when I'm on set to play because my girls kind of reignited my passion for acting. 10, my pregnancy pillow. I've been sleeping with it for years before I was even pregnant. It's so comforting, it just wraps around you. I always like to have something to stop my knees from knocking in the middle of the night. And maybe also being single, very nice to feel spooned by someone. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the February 1st issue of the New York Times Arts and Leisure section. We read from the New York Times Arts and Leisure section every Sunday at 3 p.m. Your reader's been Val. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the rendering of this morning's Buffalo News. Following that at 6 p.m. is the Buffalo News Viewpoints. Stay tuned for this reading and more throughout the day. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision,